Welcome back to Pipe and Verse here at Perkins Pipes. Got two very interesting things to talk about with you today, both a pipe and some verse. So we've got a falcon here, my first falcon. It's a very special falcon. We'll talk with you about that. And we want to talk a little bit about the poetry of Robert Frost. So as always, let's get this guy lit. Let's get to talking. So, never had a falcon, and was curious about them, read about them and so forth. A lot of people who watch this channel have falcons. And it turned out that one of the blanks that I had and you may notice, if you go back and look at some of the other videos, I talked about buying some blanks off of Amazon, making several pipes. And I had this one blank that was curious to me at the time, didn't know what it was. It had this threaded bottom, and it didn't seem to have the normal shank to it. I thought, what's going on here? Somebody informed me, oh, that would be a bowl for a falcon pipe. So I finally got around to getting a falcon stem. And I got this at the excellent Briar and Burley in Bloomington, Indiana. Excellent brick and mortar store. It isn't maybe the traditional falcon stem that a lot of people like to think about. I really did like it because of the black and the brass colored band here. I just got a fondness for black, and so I wanted to dye this black. I finished out. I really didn't do anything to the blank itself. Usually I do some work on the blank, shaping and so forth. Didn't do anything, really just dyed it and finished it out there. And so made what I'm going to call the Black Falcon pipe. And already seems to smoke just fine. Definitely have the classic Codger blend Prince Albert in here. Now, it's all right for cleansing. Probably won't that much. It is a bit heavy, and just the balance. I mean, it's okay. Certainly, you can clench it. Don't know how often I will. So, when I started the pipe and verse segments of this channel, somebody immediately posted to do something about Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken, Robert Frost poetry in general. And I knew that I wanted to do that. And part of the reason I wanted to do that, I do like Frost. I wouldn't say he's my favorite poet, but certainly I do like Frost stuff. But Frost will always hold a special place in my heart because of this particular edition. So you see it here, Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken, a selection of Robert Frost poems with an introduction and commentary by Louis Untermeyer. You go, well, what's so special about that? Well, it's who gave it to me. It was my wife before she was my wife. It was, let's see here, probably about 6 months or so after we'd gotten engaged. Would be another almost year and a half before we actually got married. And she wrote inside here, and she says, first of all, it's interesting. She says, Stephen. Actually, I'm looking at the date here. This is on the anniversary of the first year anniversary of our first date. We started dating, and honestly, just a few months later, I proposed. And then this is the first anniversary of our first date. I don't really ever remember her calling me Stephen, but apparently she did, or at least for this inscription she did. She says, I hope you will enjoy this book as much as I've enjoyed loving you this past year. I'm really glad that you and I have chosen to travel the same road. I love you. Little smiley face. Love, Melissa. What makes this so special is obviously it's a gift from my fiancée, the woman who's going to become my wife. That's special. But what makes it particularly special to me is that my wife, we were both students at Indiana University at the same time, at this time. She knew me well enough that she knew I would appreciate a book of poetry. What a wonderful gift. And I would ask you this. We'll ask this question early in the video before we ask the big questions at the end. What are some gifts you have received that meant so much because the person who gave them clearly knew you? What are some gifts you have given other people that you put some thought into, and because you knew that person's interests and likes, preferences? Now, don't get me wrong. Back in the day, it was pretty typical. My mother-in-law would often give me a tie for Christmas, among other things. Always appreciated those ties. She knew I needed them to teach in for school. But, no offense to ties, there's nothing that terribly personal. Or it can be. But not in the way that this was really a neat personal gift. So there's your mid-video question. So, like I say, I like Frost. I'm not the hugest Frost fan. I'm kind of a greatest hits kind of guy, I guess, when it comes to Frost. The Mending Wall, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, Birches. Many of the ones that maybe you and others have read when you were in high school or college, perhaps. And truly, my favorite Frost poem is The Road Not Taken, for a couple of reasons. I love the poem, and I also remember we sang a version of this when I was in high school, in choir. It was set to music. I don't know if I can even recall it right now, but two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. It went on from there. And so I remember reading it in school and then connecting and sang it in school, and so that was kind of neat. So I have a connection, double connection to it that way. So let's get into it. And it is the last poem in the collection. And you could say it's maybe it certainly is one of Frost's best known poems, perhaps his best known poem. So let's read it through, and we'll talk about it a little bit. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So let's see a little bit about the structure of the poem. And it is, what we got here, 4 stanzas. And we've got a rhyme scheme, A, B, A, B, A. So we have 5 verses, 5 lines in each stanza. Ood, oath, ood. Sorry, it goes A, B, A, B. Sorry about that. A, B, A, B. Ood, oath, oath. Fair, claim, where they're same. So we have that sort of rhyme scheme. What's interesting is about the meter or the rhythm of the poem itself. And because it's the end, I have to kind of lay it upside down there while I do a relight. One of the things that beginning poets, younger poets, will do sometimes is, particularly trying to write metrical poetry, is be a bit too slavish in adherence to a particular metrical scheme. Now, this is basically iambic tetrameter. So here's a pure iambic tetrameter line. Though as, for that, the pa, sing there. Right? Unstressed, stressed. Though as, for that, the pa, sing there. Right? So we've got iambic tetrameter because there's 4 units of that unstressed, stressed rhythm. But Frost is not he's not a slave to that kind of meter. He brings in almost every line has 1 or 2 anapestic substitutions. You're going, whoa, now you're talking physics here. What in the world? Anapestic substitutions. An anapest is unstressed, unstressed, stressed. So, for example, the very first line, 2 roads, that's an iamb. Diverged, that's an iamb. In yell, that's an anapest. Low wood, back to an iamb. Let's look at that 3rd foot of the line in yell. All right, it's part of in a yellow wood. In yell, in unstressed, unstressed. Yell, right? The beginning of the word yellow is stressed. And English, and this is certainly true for Greek, it's certainly true for Latin poetry, not just accommodates, but welcomes substitutions. If it's too regular, okay, every line exactly the same, which my beloved Alexander Pope does have a tendency to do that with his rhyming couplets, these so-called heroic couplets. Same thing for John Dryden, who is also a master of the heroic couplets. When you have I'm sorry, I was trying to think about Dryden's opening to the Aeneid there. I'm blanking on the opening line. The second line is, and June knows, and haughty June knows unrelenting hate. But let's go with Pope for a minute there. Achilles' wrath to Greece, the direful spring of woes, unnumbered heavenly God to sing. That wrath which hurled to Pluto's gloomy reign the souls of mighty chiefs untimely slain, whose limbs unburied on the naked shore, devouring dogs and hungry vultures tore. At some point, that can get kind of sing-songy, and a lot of people really just don't like that. But if you read Milton and Paradise Lost or Frost or so many other poets, they take a basic metrical scheme and then they put in substitutions. So you can substitute that short, or unstressed, stressed of the anapest. You can substitute that for an iambic foot. And he does. Almost every line has at least 1. Some of the lines have 2 anapests in them. And what that does, it kind of breaks up the rhythm a little bit. Keeps you from falling asleep. Keeps you from being lulled into sleepiness. Okay. That's the structure. Now, what does he say? 2 rows diverge into yellow wood. Certainly here in Indiana, I can picture that. We're getting close to fall at the time of the recording of this video. And autumn is one of the most beautiful seasons here in Indiana. And sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Don't we often wish when confronted with a choice that we could have both? Ask a child, do you want ice cream or a cupcake? And the child says, I want both, right? But we know that that is often just not possible. Long I stood, since you can't have both paths. I looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth, seeing each path as far as it would take. Then took the other as just as fair and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. So both these paths, he's looking back and forth. Should I go to the right? Should I go to the left? And he finally decides to take the one particular path. He says, because it was grassy and wanted wear. In other words, it didn't have a lot of wear and tear on it. You could tell few, if any, people had taken that particular path. And so it's like, I want to try something that nobody else has done before. That's the path for me. Though, as for that, he has to admit, the passing there had warned them really about the same. And I think that's an interesting line, because we often think that, oh yeah, I want to do something that nobody's done before, right? Well, as the Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes says, there's nothing new under the sun. You may think that you're the first one to take this path, but not necessarily. Not necessarily. Someone else may have taken it before, and these 2 paths, this one looks like nobody's done it. In fact, probably they're worn about the same, all things considered. And by the way, this is smoking just fine, but folks, remember, when I'm getting into heavy talking like I am with poetry, it's hard to keep going with the pipe. Okay. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. So that particular morning, and maybe you can imagine there's still a little wetness on the leaves, perhaps. There's a little bit of dew on the ground. And nobody else had been out in the forest that day but Frost. And then he says, I kept the first for another day. So I'm thinking, okay, this is really neat. I'm going to go down this path, but I'm going to come back someday and I'm going to take the other path. But again, the realist, just like he knows, both paths have realistically been trodden about the same. And here he's a realist again. He says, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. Oh, yes, I can say I'll come back and try this again sometime. But we know how we go. We know how life goes, right? Take a particular path. Say, hey, I'm going to major in this in college, but I'm going to come back someday and take these other classes. And you know how it goes. And then he says, I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. The sigh of older age, the sigh of wisdom, looking back. And he has enough sense and presence of mind in the moment to realize, yeah, this is kind of momentous here. This making a decision between 2 paths. 2 roads diverge in a wood, and there's the pause, and then the repeat. I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Now, I think it's a very American poem. In that, certainly Americans are known for being the rugged individualists. I often talk with my students about the fact that the Greeks and the Romans would have known nothing of this. They say, why would you be an individual? Why would you do something different? Right? Do it the way your father did it. Do it the way his father did it, and his father before him. Tradition, right? Part of our culture. This is the way we do things. And so many cultures have been that way and are that way. But in the United States, and especially in the modern era, we're all about being individuals, right? The rugged individual. And so we make a lot of this. And I don't know. I don't know. I like to eat places I haven't eaten before when we go on vacation somewhere. I like to hike new trails, truly, to take the road not taken. But I don't know necessarily that there's something that needs to be celebrated about the fact of, ooh, hey, I did something that nobody else has done before. I don't know. Maybe there is. Maybe there is something worth celebrating in that. Well, sometimes I think people just do stuff to be different for the sake of being different, right? And I'm not sure that how much value there is in that. If you really are genuinely interested in trying something new, try something new, man. Maybe you've never read Frost poetry before. Try some Frost poetry. Maybe you've never read Alexander Pope before. Try some Alexander Pope. But I don't think you do it just for the sake of, well, hey, nobody's ever done it before. I think I'll do it. Do it because you're genuinely interested in it. At least that's my take. I don't know. What is your take? Talk to us about your thoughts about this particular poem, much beloved, The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Any of other Frost poems, we'd love to hear your comments. As Malcolm Guite likes to say, I do these little things in order at last to do nothing. Or as I like to say in Latin, parvo ago ut tandem, nihil agam. Have a wonderful day.